Colts fans, we made it. The Indianapolis Colts have reported for training camp, and the first practice kicks off tomorrow. So, what are the expectations for Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor, and the rest of the Colts in camp? And who do we think comes out on top in each position battle? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and as always, I'm alongside my partner in crime and fellow host of the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, Drake Wally. Drake, we finally can stop talking about what will happen and start talking about what is happening. The Colts begin training camp tomorrow at Grand Park. And boy, while there wasn't much drama this offseason, knock on wood, there's still a lot of storylines that we're going to be able to cover in this training camp, from the return of Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor to position battles all across the roster. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, and it's going to be a really awesome year for the Colts because now you're walking into a second year with Stike, and he's got a year coaching under his belt. There's a lot of prominent rookies guys that were rookies last season that are walking into year two, but also, guys like A.D. Mitchell, guys like Latu, those prominent rookie names that are probably going to get those starting snaps above the rest of them. It's really going to be fun to watch them start to gel as a pro, within the Colts organization, and just kind of see the whole team grow, because they're all still pretty young. So, yeah, I think it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to dive into it. And already there's things to talk about, and they haven't really done much.
Exactly. And it's going to be a lot of fun to dissect this football team throughout training camp, whether it's overreactions or not. It's going to be fun to really dive in and just talk about actual football. So today we're going to talk about some of the storylines heading into camp with some guys like Jonathan Taylor, Ryan Kelly, Michael Pittman Jr., Chris Ballard, what they had to say today as the Colts reported. Then we're going to dive into the position battles for this Colts team. There's a lot. Actually, when you look at it, there's a lot of position battles and things that could change all up and down the roster. So it is going to be fun. The chat already getting us off to a hot start with our good friend Noah Jaber with the $5 super chat. Noah, thank you so much, brother, for all of your support. One of our fellow members here at Horseshoe Huddle. He says, "Happy holidays, boys. Let's freaking go." Noah, appreciate all of your support, buddy. Noah's actually got a piece out on Horseshoe Huddle. If you guys want to go check that out, definitely give him some support. Sean Contwright is in the chat as always. Thank you so much. And Stats Matt, the third host of the show. Let's go. We get videos of Colts football tomorrow. Absolutely. And of course, we can't leave out the CFO himself. Patrick, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. We're getting off to a hot start tonight, gentlemen. And ladies. We don't want to leave out the ladies and gentlemen. Patrick says, "Only thing I want is for the stone cold glass to break." And Ballard walks out to the media and says Justin Simmons is coming. His comments today weren't great. And we're going to talk about some of those comments that Chris Ballard had to say.
Yeah.
But Patrick, thank you so much, buddy, for all of your support, and glad to have you back on the stream as well. Really, really appreciate it. Guys, if you haven't done so, go follow all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts_SI on X, and then subscribe right here to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live, normally every Monday and Thursday night. But like for tonight, you want to make sure those notifications are on so you never miss us. And also subscribe on wherever you listen to podcasts, really, Apple, Spotify, Google. Make sure you give us a 5-star review on there as well. So Drake, let's dive right into our Colts training camp primer. And honestly, I say this all the time. It's all about Anthony Richardson, and we're going to start with number 5, Anthony Richardson, this evening. So Richardson did not speak to the media today, but Chris Ballard and really all the other Colts that spoke to the media received questions about Anthony Richardson. But the biggest thing that stood out, Chris Ballard said that Anthony Richardson will have no restrictions as training camp begins. There were some questions about that because that last day of mandatory minicamp, we remember that Anthony Richardson sat out that day because of soreness in his right shoulder. I wrote about it when it happened, that he vowed that there was nothing to worry about. That's been the case pretty much all summer, but Chris Ballard confirmed it Richardson is 100% and ready to go for training camp, which is great news, Drake. And then it kind of gets into with the injury behind Richardson, we can really focus in on football, and that's the most important thing. So as we look at not the full season, we just want to kind of put training camp in the preseason in a microscope here. I wanted to ask you, what do you think, or what do you want to see out of Anthony Richardson in training camp? So that way, going into this season, what would make you feel really confident about Richardson from a training camp perspective?
I think that if you can see, a continuation of what you saw last season, and that was really simply pocket presence, pre-snap reads, deep ball accuracy, ability to run in space. You kind of saw that in camp too.
Mm-hmm.
You were like pretty impressed actually with, his decision making. That's really what it is. And, in a nutshell is you want to see the decision making and the development, not take a step back at all from the start. You want to see him continue that trend of upward development. And so I think that you might see a little bit of rust, maybe, but if you do, you hope that it smooths out really quickly, because like we said last season, we've mentioned this multiple times on this podcast, he really did surprise me and Andrew with how ready he was for professional football and just to be an overall quarterback. So you just hope that continues to get better.
Yeah, and I think we do have to have realistic expectations with Anthony Richardson coming into training camp, Drake. I don't think tomorrow he's absolutely going to light the Colts defense on fire. And even if he does, training camp is long. There's going to be good days for the offense. There's going to be bad days for the offense. And in fact, most years the defense starts ahead of the offense, and the offense does have to play some catch up. That's usually how it is for most football teams. But what you do want to see is, like you mentioned, the decision making, just knowing where to go with the football. You want to see his processing speed, and make sure he's not sitting back there in the pocket for 3 and 4 seconds before he gets rid of the football. You want to see him make sure he's decisive with it. He knows where to go with the football, and it's coming out quickly and accurately to his receivers. I think that's the biggest thing. I don't think there's really any question that Anthony Richardson, after a season, has mastered the offense. He's a very bright kid. I don't think that was really the question at all. It's just being able to get out there and get those live reps, because outside of the offseason program and mandatory mini camp, which those really can't even be, I don't know if those can even be counted as live reps, because the players aren't in pads. So once the pads go on, it's a much different football atmosphere. So how is Anthony Richardson out there doing, and how is he playing when the pads get on? Strap on. He's not going to be hit, but at the same time, the processing speed has to be there, because the game speed gets quicker. You want to make sure that he is kind of getting that confidence back in him, getting that routine down that really can't be duplicated until you're out there playing live football. So, and then, like we mentioned, you just kind of want to see him improve on where he was last year. You don't really want to see I mean, if he is out there at the same level he was when he got injured, I mean, you can kind of say that might be expected, because he hasn't been able to fully practice since then. But it's been a long time. You want to see some improvement in his mechanics, his accuracy, his ability to process as well. You want to see those slight improvements, and just overall him being more comfortable as a starting quarterback in the NFL, going up against NFL defenses.
Yeah, and I like what you mentioned, that, you're still kind of looking at a guy who didn't really play a lot at all. I mean, four games, and it was sparing. I mean, he only completed from start to finish the Rams game, which was I believe week 4, week 3. But, he still hit the ground running in week 1 of last year, and he looked good. Okay. So I think the expectations are high. I think that the ceiling is high. I think that you're not going to, like you said, the stuff about him mastering the offense, that's not a question. It's the on-field stuff. It's just adjusting to pads on the field, to consistently feeling what it's like to get that pressure on the field from defenses and maybe take a hit or two. and just do it week after week. And I think this is a great start for Richardson. He now knows what to expect going into training camp, and the expectations are super high. But at the end of the day, two things. Number one, it matters about everything's hinging upon his health. Okay. And number two, it is still and will for the future for the future going forward until something else happens, Colts fans. It's all about Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, obviously the health is priority number one.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson needs to stay healthy out there, but then getting all of the first team reps, as many reps as possible. I think that is going to be the key and the focus for Anthony Richardson throughout training camp and the preseason. Now let's go to the guy that's snapping him the football, and that's Ryan Kelly. Ryan Kelly is entering the final year of his deal. The Pro Bowl center has made it known that he wants to stay in Indy long term, but he was asked about those contract negotiations today, and he said that the team has made it clear that a long-term extension is right, or getting a long-term extension done right now is not a priority for the team. So I saw some people kind of taking those comments and kind of running with them, saying that either the Colts don't want Kelly to come back, or why are the Colts having another contract issue in training camp. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, Drake, because when we look at this, even last season, the Colts did not do an extension with Michael Pittman early, Grover Stewart, Kenny Moore, and all of those guys ended up coming back, receiving long-term extensions with the team. So just because the Colts do not want to kind of focus or try to get an extension done with Ryan Kelly right now, to me, that doesn't mean that they don't want him back. I just think that they want to make sure that Ryan Kelly's still going to play at a high level. He was a Pro Bowler last season, but in 2022, not that long ago, guys, we were having conversations and wondering if the Colts were going to cut or trade Ryan Kelly. So I think it's again, you just want to make sure that he is, as he gets a little bit older, that he's still playing at the top of his game. And in my opinion, if Ryan Kelly goes out there and plays like he did in 2023 and has another Pro Bowl season, it's a no-brainer that the Colts are going to re-sign Ryan Kelly. I understand that they just drafted Tanner Bortolini, but you're not just going to let a Pro Bowl center walk. And you guys, it's not like Ryan Kelly is 37, 38 years old, okay? He hasn't even been in the league for 10 years yet. He's still fairly young, especially for a center. But I could be completely wrong on this, but that's just my take. Drake, what do you think? Do you think that this, that is necessarily that the comments today and how the Colts are handling this, does that signal that Ryan Kelly is on the outs with the Indianapolis Colts, or is it something different?
There's so much time to get that done. There really is. I don't think it means anything. I think he's going to remain a Colt. I think they're going to figure out a way to get it done. 2022 is really the only season you can look back on his career and say, we were real concerned about him, that season, maybe outside of 2017 when he only played 7 games, so coming off of a season where you're playing at a phenomenal level, he was one of the highest rated, at times the highest rated, center as far as efficiency and blocking, in the NFL. He played at a phenomenal level, had a massive resurgent year, and smashed all those, people who were saying, well, he needs to go here, he needs to go there, the Colts need to let go of him. All it means is that they're just prioritizing other things like getting Richardson ready. And, I think there's other, which we'll get to later, there's other news that came up where, people have to get certain, clearance, to play. So there's just certain things in this moment that need to get taken care of first. But I fully expect Ryan Kelly to remain a Colt.
Well, and the thing is, too, I know a lot of people are looking to the Colts drafted Tanner Bortolini in the fourth round to be the center of the future for the Colts. And it may turn out that way. I think Tanner Bortolini has a lot of talent. But at the same time, guys, Tanner Bortolini wasn't a first round center. He was drafted in the 4th round. There is no guarantee that he's going to be ready to play and be a starting center in the NFL next season. And if Ryan Kelly is still playing at a Pro Bowl level, there's no way you move off of that. It's not like Ryan Kelly is going to command more like top of the line center money. I mean, sure, it's he's not going to be cheap, but he's not going to make $20 million a year on his next deal. So I think what you're looking at here is you're looking at the Colts just taking things slow. They know they don't have to get anything done, and then they're in a wait and see approach. If Kelly goes out there and has another fantastic season, it's a no-brainer. He will be back with the Indianapolis Colts. Guy that went through this last season, all this contract drama, Jonathan Taylor. Thank God, Drake, we're not talking about Jonathan Taylor and any more contract issues with him this season. But Jonathan Taylor came to camp happy. He was wearing an AR-15 Florida Gators shirt, repping his quarterback. And for all intents and purposes, there's a lot of internal hype around Jonathan Taylor with the Colts and what he can do this season. Chris Ballard again on today, I guess Chris Ballard again today said Jonathan Taylor is going to have a really big year. And he said that multiple times throughout the offseason. So there's a reason for that. He's not just saying that for hyperbole. He keeps repeating that Jonathan Taylor is going to have a big year, which really kind of signifies to me that yes, Anthony Richardson is still there, but this Colts offense is still going to be ran through Jonathan Taylor for a good portion of the offensive snaps. So let's talk about, what do you see kind of the differences between Jonathan Taylor, obviously last year at this point, to this year, and then what are your expectations for JT as he enters year 5?
Just the overall energy that you feel from the entire team. I mean, you kind of like got this, you kind of saw him out there last year in his hood or in his like hooded sweatshirt, like with a blank stare on his face. And, everyone was like, well, Malky Kyle was telling him to do that so that, it raises the price tag. And it's like, who, looking back, no one cares why he was doing that or why he wasn't. But the point is the team feels more in unison, united, approaching a common goal rather than here's everybody looking forward to Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor being labeled as selfish as over here looking for a contract. It all got done. And now you're talking about Jonathan Taylor. Not only does he not worry about this contract anymore, he is behind that, he's the surgery and the ankle and all that, it's behind him now. So you're talking about a guy who's not only healthy and ready to go, but he's got the money he wants and feels like he deserves. And it's with an offense that I really feel like fits him and makes him more explosive than he's ever been. You got to think, guys, that year when he was pushing MVP numbers, he was also running into a lot of walls. I mean, the guy was getting like 25 carries a game. With his athleticism, of course you're going to find a hole and bust one loose at some point. So I can't wait. I honestly hope they don't use him as much as they did in 2021, but that the usage is close to it, obviously, but that, he's just more efficient in the process.
There's just been zero distractions for Jonathan Taylor this offseason.
Yeah.
No contract issues. He has been 100% healthy all offseason as well, and he's really focused in on his game. And Jonathan Taylor has gotten a lot bigger too. And I kind of mentioned, I think I mentioned this in a previous episode not too long ago, but the new strength and conditioning program that the Colts have had, it's noticeable with these guys. Like I said, Richardson, Taylor, Quentin Nelson, Alec Pierce, a lot of these guys look much bigger. Josh Downs, even, they look much bigger and much stronger. And I think there's a reason for that. It's not just a coincidence. I think Jonathan Taylor is he heard the noise last season. He heard the noise about how he got his money and then kind of fell off a little bit, became more injury prone. I think that's fueling Jonathan Taylor internally. Not only that, the Colts saw Jonathan Taylor was back and ready to go towards the end of last season. You look at that Houston Texans game, he even had to come out of the game because he got hurt a little bit and still almost ran for 200 yards in that week 18 contest. So you look at Jonathan Taylor, his body of work, and then what the Colts and Shane Steichen have planned for Jonathan Taylor next to Anthony Richardson. And I think you could be looking at another huge year out of Jonathan Taylor. I don't think he's going to get that 2021 usage either, Drake, where
Mm-mm.
they put the entire offense on his back. They don't need to, but could I see a year where Jonathan Taylor goes out there and gets 1,400 yards rushing and a good 12 to 13 touchdowns? It's a very real possibility, and so I think that the Colts are really going to lean heavily on Jonathan Taylor for that. Another guy that they're going to lean on heavily, Michael Pittman Jr., who's coming off of a brand new contract, 3 years, $70 million extension. And some people said that maybe Michael Pittman's not worth that much money, or is he considered really a wide receiver one? Well, Pittman talked about it today and said that he's going out there to earn more respect around the league. And he kind of talked about the tiers that he views wide receiver ones. There's one tier for guys that get over 1,400 yards, another tier for guys that get over 1,200 yards, and then that third tier is kind of guys that get over 1,000 yards. So he talked about kind of wanting to really go up and be in tier one or tier two, and then getting more touchdowns. Michael Pittman specifically talked about he hasn't been good enough in the red zone, and he hasn't been good enough scoring touchdowns for this team. That's something that he said he really focused on this offseason, was getting better in those short areas of the field, just being more of a threat to score for this Colts team. He said, and it kind of goes both ways. He needs to be good enough and better so that way he can score in those situations, but he also needs to prove, and the coaches have to have confidence in him, so that way Shane Steichen calls the plays for Michael Pittman when they get to those areas. So Drake, I think in 4 seasons with the Indianapolis Colts, as Michael Pittman heads into year 5 here, I think Michael Pittman total has 15 touchdowns with the Colts. In the last 2 seasons, he's had 4 each year. So only 15 touchdowns in his 4-year career. Do you think that changes this year, where we see Michael Pittman go from a 4 to 5 touchdown a year guy into a different category where he's getting, 8, 9, 10 touchdowns this season?
I think 6 is the height you can expect from Pittman, because, and here's the thing, it's situational. It's got nothing to do, I think, with his actual talent. Okay. You're talking about you're going to be dealing with Anthony Richardson, who is the dude's built like a truck. All right. On the goal line, that right there is a threat. All right. All you got to do is sneak him in, and he's huge. So that's going to happen. Jonathan Taylor is a goal line running back. That's going to happen. They've got Mo Alley Cox. They've got Jelani Woods. Those are 2 pretty big red zone targets. And I mean, Jelani Woods, even with that weird season, his rookie year, he still caught 3 touchdowns. Mo still caught 3 touchdowns last year. You hope Alec Pierce starts to catch more, but there's basically, at the end of the day, there's more names I could even throw out there. A lot of mouths to feed on that offense. And it's going to be a lot of ground attack. I think you're going to see a lot of that at the goal line, where Steichen's just going to use his quarterback or running back and that really expensive offensive line, and they're just going to punch it in.
I agree there. I do think that a lot of, because of the players that you have, and Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor, and how they're able to get in when it's closer to the goal line, that definitely takes away from it. But I also think that the Colts could do a better job of calling Michael Pittman's number when they get closer to that goal line. I mean, how many times have we seen over the course of his career Michael Pittman jump up and sky for a deep ball down the field?
Sure.
Put a jump ball situation in there. Michael Pittman a lot of times wins those. I think sometimes people forget that he's 6'4" and 220 pounds. He's a big-bodied wide receiver. Very long arms. So I know maybe fades to the back corner of the end zone aren't as successful as they used to be when Peyton Manning was quarterbacking here in Indianapolis, but you got to give this guy more chances in the red zone, and I understand you have guys like Mo Alley Cox and Jelani Woods out there as well, but man, he's your wide receiver one, and you're paying him 23 $23.3 million a year for a reason. He's not supposed to be out there just getting 4 touchdowns a year. When you're in the red zone, give him more opportunities, expand his route tree a little bit. When he gets one-on-one opportunities, throw it up there for him. A lot of times the worst thing that can happen is he'll draw a pass interference call, and then you get the ball right there at the 1. So I do think it goes both ways, where Pittman does have to kind of go out there and first of all prove that he should be receiving those in those opportunities. But the Colts coaching staff has to give him more chances, and Anthony Richardson has to give him some chances too, looking his way in that area. We didn't really get to see that too much last year because of the small sample size with Richardson, but I do think that placing a bigger emphasis on getting Michael Pittman Jr. Involved in the red zone and close to the end zone, because he does a lot of work to get the Colts down there. And then in the red zone, they kind of go different ways. Keep placing a priority on getting Pittman more involved that way, because again, if all that attention is going to Pittman, that's going to open up a lot more opportunities for the rest of the field, kind of clear out that box as well, so you can see more success down there with Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson in the run game.
Yeah, and I honestly think that a little bit of consistency will do Pittman well, because when he had a quarterback for the entire season, outside of his rookie year, he had his career high of 6 touchdowns, and it was a wacky quarterback like Carson Wentz, where you didn't know what the heck you were going to get. So I think that if you have Richardson for all 17 games in year 2 of Steichen's offense with Pittman, man, I really do have high hopes. I just think that it doesn't matter how good of a receiver you are in the NFL. If you just have constant quarterbacks, man, you might look great on, almost across the board, but there's going to be at least a couple areas where you're like, you could really improve there. I think that it's just been, with Pittman, it's been those touchdowns, and consistency is going to help.
Now, Drake, the biggest thing about training camp, a lot of times, at least for fans, is watching the position battles to see who is going to earn those starting spots, or even those rotational spots, just a bigger role for this team. So it's time to talk about the position battles to watch at Colts camp. And honestly, I don't know if there is a bigger position battle than that starting X wide receiver duel, I should say, between Alec Pierce and Adonai Mitchell. Alec Pierce has been with the Colts entering his 3rd year. Obviously, Adonai Mitchell was drafted in the 2nd round by the Colts this spring, and they do bring a different skill set. Alec Pierce is a fantastic blocker, definitely a jump ball winner, whereas Adonai Mitchell is more of an athlete, more fluid with his route running, very crisp as a route runner, can get in and out of his cuts, probably can have a little bit more diverse route tree and more options with Adonai Mitchell at the helm. So what do you think, Drake? We'll just run through all of these rules kind of quickly and kind of talk about who we think ends up winning. So who do you think comes out on top between Alec Pierce and Adonai Mitchell?
I think initially, you're going to see Alec Pierce come out on top. He's going to start week 1. And I do think that unless we see a Josh Downs type of situation like last year, he's just more NFL ready, I think, at this point. But I do think that Mitchell has far more capability. He has far more to offer as far as a pass catcher, at least at this point. His ceiling is ridiculous. I mean, he's one of the most athletic receivers, ladies and gentlemen, ever drafted. Okay. I mean, he is ridiculously athletic. And so you're talking about a guy that he fits, I think, the scheme better than Pierce. And I also think Pierce fits the scheme well. He's a vertical threat. He's a guy that if you get runs downfield, he's going to be almost like a snowplow going down the field with your ball carrier. So I think that it's a great position battle. I think immediately it favors Pierce, but long-term it absolutely favors Mitchell. Maybe even, at some point during the regular season, if he jumps him on the chart.
Yeah, and I think I agree with Stats Matt here in his take. And guys, make sure you put your predictions in the chat as well. Would love to see them. Stats Matt says that Alec Pierce starts, but AD's role expands as the season goes on. So, and I do think that's true. I think Alec Pierce will start the season as the starter there on the outside, but it's not like he's going to be playing the 94% of the snaps that he did last year. I could very easily see a 50-50 split between Alec Pierce and Adonai Mitchell. And then maybe as Mitchell's feet get wet and if he in the league and he starts, really proving that he can be a starter at the position and really starts to outperform Alec Pierce, then I think that's when you see Adonai Mitchell take over as that starting X wide receiver, and Alec Pierce kind of takes a reserve role in that X spot. But let's look at another position on offense, and that's tight end. Drake, Jelani Woods, Kylan Granson, Drew Ogletree, all of those guys are vying for starting reps at the tight end position, and there's only so many reps to go around. Obviously, Kylan Granson has been the move tight end for the Colts for some time. Drew Ogletree kind of established himself as more of a Y tight end, an inline tight end. And Jelani Woods has the versatility to play both. So, and I know the Colts have really high hopes for what Jelani Woods can do this season as long as he can stay healthy, especially Shane Steichen. So what do you think? How do you think this plays out between Jelani Woods, Kylan Granson, and Drew Ogletree?
Well, I think that everybody wants to crown Jelani Woods the undisputed tight end one. All right. And look, I think the Colts want that. The Colts definitely want that. And so does Shane Steichen. So I think that when you look at the potential, it's Jelani Woods. He's got all of the athletic, advantages here. But I think Drew Ogletree has established himself as a more polished blocker. And I think that Kylan Granson right now, I think we've mentioned this and talked about it on a positional episode. You might be looking at him starting the year as your tight end one, and the Colts have so many different tight ends that you can't really say tight end one is the inline guy per se. Right. It's the guy who's going to have the most snaps. That's right. The way we have to talk about it here. So I think that Kylan Granson is definitely the most likely to start day one. But I think you're going to see something similar here, kind of with like A.D. Mitchell, like stats Matt mentioned. You're going to see Jelani Woods' role expand a little bit more as the season goes along, but fully expect him to be in red zone sets right away.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think again, it's a lot of it's going to be predicated by training camp. To see how Jelani Woods can establish a connection with Anthony Richardson. How is he going to be if he's placed in line as a blocker? Because if he really struggles as a blocking tight end, that's going to limit his snaps, because in certain situations you're going to want to have Kylan Granson out there because he is a much better separator, and I think he can. Kylan Granson has some qualities to his game that are better than Jelani Woods. In other instances, you're going to want Woods out there. So if Woods can establish himself as a really good blocking tight end as well, and I know he's really worked on that this offseason, then that's where I could think you see Jelani Woods taking the lion's share of the snaps at tight end, where Kylan Granson could come in to spell him on certain passing situations, Drew Ogletree more on some running downs if he needs to come in as that Y tight end. But I think ideally what the Colts would like is for Jelani Woods to separate himself and be their top tight end. And then you use Kylan Granson and Drew Ogletree kind of in the mix there in different situations for both of those. Let's look at the chat here. I want to go back to talking about Pierce and Adonai Mitchell. Brandon Moses, good friend of both of us, good friend of the show. Moses asked, do you think if there's a 50-50 split between Pierce and Mitchell as early as the start of the season? I don't know if it's as early as the start of the season, because I feel like Mitchell would have to have an amazing training camp for that to happen, and Pierce would have to really struggle. I think probably at the start of the season, you're looking more 60-40, 65-35. But by the middle of the season, I think it's 50-50 pretty easily. I would put money that maybe even by week 6, it's a 50-50 split. I really think Adonai Mitchell is going to really grab this thing and take this competition. And by the end of the year, it's pretty obvious that Mitchell is one of the top wide receivers for this team. The CFO coming in hot with another super chat, and this is a fantastic question, and it's a very hard question as well. Patrick asks, which group finishes the season with more catches? Pittman, Pierce, and Granson, or Downs, Mitchell, and Woods? Very, very tough question. Drake, I'm going to have you go first on this one. Do you think that the trio of Pittman, Pearson, Granson gets more catches, or will it be Downs, Mitchell, and Woods?
Well, I think Pittman's going to have probably like 110, and then I'd say Pierce will get 40. I'd say Granson will get probably 40, maybe 35. So that's like 185. And then like Downs, Mitchell, and Woods. Downs, I think, is going to have a great season. I think he's going to have like 85 catches. But Mitchell, give me 45. That's 130. And then Woods, man, 30. He'll get like 38. He'll compete with Granson. So I think Pittman's ridiculous amount of receptions. The first three are going to catch more.
I think Pittman, Pearson, Granson end up catching more, because I also think that while Woods could get 30, 40 catches,
Yeah.
I think Granson could end up with around 30 catches as well. And if you're already getting Pittman with like you said 105, 110, which I think is very realistic for Michael Pittman Jr., Alec Pierce isn't going to have 11 catches like he did last year either. I could expect Alec Pierce to be up there in the 30 catch range, 30 to 40 catch range as well. So just because of the sheer volume that Pittman is going to bring, plus Granson and Pierce are still going to get theirs. I don't think it's enough to surpass what Downs is going to get at around 80 to 85. And I think Mitchell could be around 40 to 50. Woods can be around 40 to 45. It's just not going to be enough to surpass what the others are going to get. Fantastic question, Patrick. Thank you so much again for the super chat. You're really living up to your CFO name, and Drake and I can't even begin to tell you how much it means to us. We really appreciate it. Let's talk about some backup roles, Drake, on the offensive side of the ball. Running back 2. That was a battle that Chris Ballard mentioned today as a position to watch. And I think while there may be 3 guys that could theoretically be in the running, I think it ultimately comes down to 2. And I think it's between Trey Sermon and Evan Hall. I don't think Tyler Goodson really is going to play much of a factor in this. So I do think it's going to be between those 2 guys. Trey Sermon obviously was running back 2 for most of the year behind Zach Moss last season. Then when Zach Moss was hurt, Trey Sermon was that running back 2 behind Jonathan Taylor. Evan Hall, had a lot of hope for Evan Hall last year, only got to see him for a few snaps before he had that season-ending knee injury. We're both really, really high on Evan Hall. So Drake, does that transfer over to this year as well? And do you think Evan Hall will take over as the primary backup to Jonathan Taylor, or do you think it's Trey Sermon's to lose?
I think that, man, I really think that Trey Sermon has earned the right to at least fight for it, because you saw what he could be in that Pittsburgh Steelers game. Okay. Him and Goodson, they were just a 1-2 punch. They kept hitting Pittsburgh, and you'd see a lot of big runs from Goodson, or like a couple of really good ones anyway, but it was really Trey Sermon that was kind of like just that constant that was being used. So I like what he offers. He's kind of like Zach Moss. I think he's bigger. He's a bigger running back. So he's definitely more of your physical running back, but he's got a little bit of kick to him for sure. But man, Evan Hall, he's a great pass protector for a running back. He is the best right now pass catching back on the Colts. I mean, he's definitely the best pass catching back on the Colts. And I think that he also poses a threat as a downhill runner too, because he's only like 5'10", but he still weighs like 205.
He's a bullet ball.
He's just a problem. He's a big time problem, and he has an extensive route tree for a guy that comes out of the backfield. Dude, that is such a problem for defenses. I mean, guys like Austin Eckler, guys like Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, he's not on their level for what we know. But when Nyheim Hines was running routes, you saw defenses have to really adjust to that, and you got to factor that in to your defensive game plan. So I think that as far as the experience, Hall played like 1 game. So it's definitely Trey Sermon's, I think, to lose, really. I think that he's got to keep Hall away, because Hall is just more complete. He's got more to offer. And, man, when you have pass blocking ability as a running back, oh, man, you'll definitely catch the eye of your coach for sure.
And that's Evan Hall. Evan Hall's a fantastic pass blocker. Where I kind of sit, Drake, is where Patrick is sitting here. I see the running back situation as not even running back 1 through 4, but more workhouse running back 1 and 2 and pass catching running back 1 and 2. that means Sermon is the workhorse running back 2 and Hall is the pass catch running back 1. I kind of see it that way as well. I think in a traditional sense, you're probably going to have Trey Sermon be the backup running back to Jonathan Taylor, in that if Jonathan Taylor needs a breather, you're going to have Trey Sermon come in and continue to run the football for you. However, in passing situations, I think it's clear that Evan Hall is the best pass catching back on the Colts, like you said, Drake. So even if on the depth chart per se, you see Trey Sermon as running back 2 and Evan Hall as running back 3, I honestly think that you could see their snaps and their usage be about the same. You could see, obviously, I think Jonathan Taylor is going to get around 80% of the snaps, just simply because you're paying him $14 million for a reason. And when you have an all pro caliber back like Jonathan Taylor, you want him out there on the field as much as possible. But I could see Trey Sermon and Evan Hall being used in completely different roles. Obviously, they'll both catch the football at times and they'll both run the football, but Hall being the primary pass catching back, Trey Sermon, the primary backup running back to Jonathan Taylor. So they two different roles, but their usage and the number of snaps that they get could very well be the same.
Yeah, and you're going to see a lot of various back formations with a guy like Anthony Richardson at quarterback, because you can just do so many things with so many backfield weapons. So it's going to be interesting though. But I think that what you asked was awesome. Is it Trey Sermon's to lose? I think that that's the answer.
I would probably agree there. Now let's talk about swing tackle very quickly. Another position battle Chris Ballard mentioned today, and it's one that's probably underrated. Now, he mentioned Blake Freeland having a really good offseason, and I think he's going to take a step up. He mentioned Matt Gonzalez, who the Colts took in the 3rd round, and I really like his fit as a swing tackle and even as a guard. I think he's got that position versatility. It's someone that Ballard didn't mention, but I think is going to factor into this is Jake Witt, the 7th round pick last season, who showed some promise in the little bit that we saw him in training camp, but for mostly he was injured for much of last season. So I do think that it probably comes down to Freeland and Gonzalez, but ultimately this could be a three horse race in my opinion. So Drake, do you think it ends up going to the incumbent in Freeland, who was the swing tackle last year, or do you have faith in Gonzalez that he might be able to take that away?
Gonzalez is so just crisp. He's just such an incredibly talented lineman. There's a reason that they traded up to get him. But man, Blake Freeland, he took a beating last season against the NFL's top tier pass rushers. So just because of that, I think that you can only get better with that kind of experience right out of the gate. So I'm actually intrigued to see what's going to happen with Freeland. Now, Witt is probably the most athletic of all these guys. He's definitely the most interesting because he's a wild card pick, and he's a 7th round pick that didn't even get a chance to play. So I would give it to Freeland though, if I had to just guess, just because Gonzalez is walking into his rookie season, still not too far removed from an injury. But man, Freeland, I think that he definitely has grown a little bit with all that experience.
I think so too. And do I anticipate a surge like Bernard Ryman had last season? No, I don't think. I don't think Blake Freeland is on that level, but I do think that Blake Freeland can be serviceable at that swing tackle position. I think he really focused in on adding some play strength, which was much needed. But as of right now, Blake Freeland, and again in mandatory minicamp, he was the starting right tackle because Braden Smith was out. So as of right now, it's Blake Freeland. Blake Freeland, it does have the hold on that swing tackle position. But the more that Matt Gonzalez gets into this, and you guys got to remember this, before that injury at the beginning of last season at Pitt, Matt Gonzalez was seen widely across the NFL as a top 50 pick in the draft. So when you have that kind of skill with you, it's going to be a fun competition to see. And if Blake Freeland even starts to struggle a little bit, and Matt Gonzalez is looking steady at that tackle position, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest to see Matt Gonzalez be the primary swing tackle for the Colts. And he also has that guard versatility too, where I think we are looking at the future starting right guard for the Colts in 2025 in Matt Gonzalez. But maybe get some experience at tackle and get that out on the field. That could be the way for Gonzalez to get that experience, so that way the Colts are more comfortable putting him in there as the starting right guard in 2025 if Will Fries ends up leaving in free agency. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball. This position battle, Drake, I think this one is probably the easiest to determine, and it's not because of the talent level of the guy behind. It's just because I don't know if there's necessarily a true starter at this position because of all the rotation. And that's at Leo. Samson Ebukam, that first round pick, Laiatu Latu. In my opinion, Ebukam may get the starting designation, but these guys are going to split snaps 50-50, 55-45. They're going to be out there for a lot of the same. They might even play with each other at the different end positions. So I don't think that if Latu doesn't get that starting label, that's necessarily a bad thing, because I think he could still go out there and produce. But both of these guys, I think, figure to be huge parts of the Colts defensive line this year, regardless of who is given that starter label. But what do you think? Do you think that ultimately it's going to be Samson Ebukam as the starter or Laiatu Latu?
Man, I think that it's going to start with Samson Ebukam, just because he's coming off of a torrid season. I mean, he had a little bit of issues, I think, at times, just kind of stringing games together. But man, he just had too good of a season to just outright deny this guy the starting position. And then I think that Latu, though, like you said, so many guys are going to get so many snaps, and I think that you're going to have different combinations of this week in and week out, where some guys are going to dominate more than other weeks, and you'll see, certain sets based off of whatever situation the defense might be facing. So I think, though, that Ebukam, because you are approaching 30, you have been in the NFL like 5 or 6 seasons. I know that he's coming off of a great season, and he himself is a great football player, but the Colts also grabbed themselves potentially a generational pass rusher. So I think that the pressure is on Ebukam, and it's not on pay. And we've talked about this. It's because Latu kind of more will be behind Ebukam and plays more of that Ebukam role. But he's also just more of a complete player than Samson Ebukam, which is saying something.
And I will say this, though. If the switch flips for Laiatu Latu about midway through the season and he really gets adjusted to the NFL game and starts to really pop off and produce and consistently getting pressure on the quarterback, the Colts aren't going to have any issue letting their first round pick go out there, play a majority of the snaps at that Leo position, and just go out there and eat, and let Sam kind of move Samson Ebukam around a little bit, or have Ebukam come in relief of Laiatu Latu. And honestly, with the hype that Latu has, and hearing about his offseason program from his personal trainer and his personal coaches of what he was able to do out there in California, wouldn't surprise me in the slightest to see Laiatu Latu really taking over as that starter about midway through the season, and potentially getting that defensive rookie of the year award for the Indianapolis Colts. Let's talk about probably the biggest position the positional battle that everyone's going to be looking to see on this defense. That's in the secondary. Let's start with cornerback, Drake. Jalen Jones, Dallas Flowers. We know the story. Dallas Flowers was the starter last year, got hurt. Jalen Jones comes in as his replacement and ends up starting the rest of the season for Dallas Flowers. And now, as we head into 2024, Jalen Jones has kind of established himself as a starter, and now it's his to lose. So what do you think ends up happening throughout training camp? Do you think Jalen Jones can hang on to that starting cornerback spot, or does Dallas Flowers take it back?
I think that Jalen Jones showed a lot of promise, and I think that he looks pretty. He kind of looks more like a veteran than a rookie, than a guy that's as young as he is. So I think that he's going to hold on to that starting role. I really do. I think Dallas Flowers is not that good of a run defender. So I think that you're going to see him more in those passing downs, those passing sets. He's a ridiculously fast athlete that can keep up with those kind of receivers. And he's going to play mostly on the outside. But I think that if he learns a little bit of slot corner, maybe he can stay with some of those faster receivers, because we've talked about it. They're not always on the outside, man. A lot of those faster receivers and number one guys, they're put right there in the slot. So, but give it to Jones. I think that he's going to start.
I would probably agree with you there. You know, they Jones, I think unless he really struggles or unless Dallas Flowers has a monster preseason, I
Mhm.
think Jones is going to be the starter there.
Yep.
I really do. And for Dallas Flowers, I think as well, he could be that first guy off the bench at outside corner, but he may be able to play inside as well. That having that versatility would certainly allow him to get on the field much quicker if one of those top guys does go down. And I think regardless, Dallas Flowers is going to have a role on special teams with the kickoff and punt return roles as well. Let's go to free safety. Nick Cross and Rodney Thomas. We kind of talked about this on Monday, but Nick Cross is the starter for now. He's the one that was running with the starting unit to end last season and through the entire offseason program. And honestly, Drake, I don't think this one is much up for debate. I think Nick Cross is going to be the starter unless the Colts do bring in somebody like Justin Simmons or Quandre Diggs. I just don't see Rodney Thomas really entering back into that conversation unless Nick Cross struggles greatly. And I think Nick Cross also knows this, that it's year 3 for him. He really has to put up or shut up. It's either he takes this starting role and he runs with it and he starts performing and showing the Colts that he is deserving of this role, not only now but for the future. Or this could be the end of the line for Nick Cross, and maybe not necessarily his tenure because he still has another year on his contract, but it could be his final shot to really earn that starting role at free safety for the Colts.
Oh yeah, the pressure's on Cross for sure. I mean, you still have even outside of Simmons and Diggs, there are guys that the Colts could sign,
Sure.
okay, for not very expensive that will push that guy. All right, and he hasn't played that much. He still hasn't played that much. So I think that the pressure's on. But yes, this is not even up for debate. I think until Rodney Thomas can prove he's not a liability, I think that he won't even see that many snaps on the field, honestly. But with Daniel Scott's injury and the Colts not really taking time to go sign a safety yet, I think that you could at least expect Thomas to stay in that depth role for now.
I just really think that the Colts, and this is going to be damned if they do, damned if they don't, or basically, or maybe that's not the right term, but really they're going to live and die by this. They want to see what Nick Cross can do, and if he turns out to be a really solid starter and a very good player for this defense, awesome. Your bet really worked out. But if not, and he really struggles again, and it turns out the safety is a liability once again for this team, like I said Monday night, just roster building malpractice by Chris Ballard and the Colts front office, and simply being a little too stubborn for your own good. And then finally, the final position battle and this one Chris Ballard again mentioned today was the backup Mike linebacker for the Colts. And in my opinion, there's 2 guys. I don't really necessarily think Jalen Carlisle would be the one for this. We might see Jalen Carlisle could be the backup Mike, but again, to me, he fits more of a Will linebacker style. But for the Mike, to me, I think it's between Patrick's favorite player in Grant Stewart and Segun Alubi. So again, Grant Stewart has shown that he can be an ace on special teams, and he's filled in at linebacker before. Segun Alubi was the backup Mike when Zaire Franklin missed that game against the Panthers last season, ended up getting an interception and leading the team in tackles. So Drake, do you think it ends up being Stewart that's the backup Mike? Is it end up being Segun Alubi, or did the Colts have Jalen Carlisle really be the backup at both Will and Mike linebacker?
I think that the last possibility is solely dependent on how Carlisle does. Like if he goes out there and he's just a freaking ball hawk, all right, you're going to see him get significant snaps. But I think if we're just talking about Alubi versus Stewart, sorry, Patrick, Stewart is a hell of a story. Okay, I think he's a hell of a special teams player, and he's just a great energy and great teammate and guy to have on the roster. I think as far as snaps though defensively, I think that he shined in the preseason, and that's about it. I think that when we're talking about meaningful snaps, Alubi showed throughout the entire Panthers game that he can be a serviceable plug-in starter. All right, he played all the snaps, and I think that was the game where Zaire Franklin missed.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you're talking about he just got plugged in there, and people forget that this guy played an entire game and led the team in tackles. So, I think that he's got the edge, and I'm actually a little bit higher on him as far as a linebacker. But special teams, that has to be locked down by Grant Stewart for sure.
I would probably lean Olubi over Stewart at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But Drake, honestly, I think as long as Jalen Carlisle is comfortable in this defense and is proving that he can handle being the linebacker, again, I think that he'll primarily come in on third downs as that dime linebacker, probably coming in for EJ Speed. However, if Speed goes down or Zaire Franklin goes down, I really don't know if it matters. I think Carlisle is probably going to be the first guy off the bench. Carlisle could come in, could be listed on the depth chart as that de facto starter at Sam linebacker, where when you have three linebackers on the field, it is Franklin, Speed, and Carlisle. But if one of those top two guys goes down, no matter the spot, as long as the Colts are comfortable with Carlisle there, I think either one of those guys go down, they're going to put Carlisle in there to get as many valuable snaps as possible. Just something to keep an eye on throughout camp as we see some different rotations and who is playing where on the Colts defense. So we'll try to keep you updated on all these position battles all throughout camp. So that way, when the final 53-man roster is made and when the Colts are ready for week one, you don't even have to worry about it because you're listening to our show here at Horseshoe Huddle. You'll know who is going to be in for the Indianapolis Colts on each situation. So before we get out of here, we got a couple more things to talk about for Colts camp, and that's the injury report. So first look at the injuries coming into training camp. And Drake, honestly, not a lot of major ones, which is great news for the Indianapolis Colts. The only player that was placed on the PUP list was Chris Lamons after he had ankle surgery this offseason. Chris Ballard said he's a week or two away, but it doesn't sound like Lamont is going to be out for very long. And then Raekwon Davis, he was placed on the active NFI list, the non-football illness list. So it's not the non-football injury list, the non-football illness list. So I think he's just dealing with some kind of bug right now, but it shouldn't keep him out for very long. So ultimately, Drake, not very many serious injuries for the Colts heading into camp, which honestly, not usually how we get to hear things when at this time of year.
Yeah, and especially coming off of an injury-riddled season, it's nice that they can start the next season, like 2024, relatively, unscathed.
Exactly. We'll run through the rest of these real quick, the minor injuries. So Juju Brents had a little bit of an ankle cleanup after the offseason program wrapped up. But Chris Ballard said nothing to worry about, watched him work out. He's been cleared to go, maybe limited to start for the first couple of days, but he should be full go very, very quickly. Same with Braden Smith and Ashton Dulin. Braden Smith with the knee surgery, Ashton Dulin, the torn ACL from last season, will be activated. They'll be worked in slowly as well because they didn't get to experience the offseason program. They were sat out of that offseason program as they recovered from their injuries, so they're not just going to make them go out there and play 100% of the practice snaps. Again, it's July, guys. These guys are going to be worked in slowly. No reason to push these guys at this point. Jernard Avery also will be limited. He's close to being a full go. And then Tyler Goodson as well came in with a toe injury. He'll be limited to start. That may hurt him a little bit with that running back 2 competition. We'll kind of have to see how that goes. But again, Drake, overall, not very many serious injuries for the Indianapolis Colts heading into this training camp, which is great to see.
Yeah, it's very encouraging, especially when you see guys like Juju Brents and Braden Smith trending towards nothing but just full health.
Exactly. And now we have the latest Colts news and rumors, guys. Not a lot yet. Thankful that there's not a lot because they could be talking about a lot of different drama going on. But the Colts actually did make a signing today. And no, Patrick, it wasn't Justin Simmons. It was instead wide receiver Laquan Treadwell. Yes, that Laquan Treadwell, the former first-round pick. I think it was if correct me if I'm wrong, Drake, but I think he was drafted way back in the 2016 NFL draft by the Minnesota Vikings. This actually the same draft that the Colts took Ryan Kelly at 15th overall. Laquan Treadwell went 23rd overall, and he's bounced around the NFL. He 8 different teams in 8 different seasons, or 7 seasons, I guess it would be. No, 8 or I'm sorry, not 8 different teams, 8 years, 5 different teams. The Colts will be his 6th different team. And honestly, he's been kind of a bust, Drake. Over the course of his career, he only has 111 catches for 1,242 yards, 5 touchdowns. As a first-round pick, hasn't actually lived up to that billing. And in my opinion, this signing for the Colts is just a camp body, a guy that brings depth at the wide receiver position for training camp in the preseason.
Yeah, when you start your first 4 seasons with the Vikings, and then your next 4 seasons are with the Falcons, the Jaguars, Seahawks, and Ravens, it really is an indication that that you might not be fitting really any NFL team. And I like what you said there. While it is cool to sign a former first-round pick, there's a reason he's a bust at this point in his career, and I just don't think he's going to make the squad.
And if he doesn't make the squad, maybe the Colts bring him on to the practice squad and he becomes a wide receiver 7. In case one of the Colts wide receivers goes down, they could elevate Treadwell on game day. But that's someone to take a look at. Might as well. Sure. You're heading into camp. There is really no downside to seeing what Treadwell can bring to this football team. And to make room for Treadwell, the Colts did waive wide receiver Xavier White, an undrafted free agent that the Colts had on the team. So, but Drake, we're finally here, buddy. Tomorrow is the first practice of 2024 Colts training camp, and I can't wait to see those guys out there, and maybe just in helmets and shells and helmets and shorts tomorrow as they kind of work their way back into things. But football is back, baby.
Yeah, and it's nice to not have to talk about positions every single week. And get excited, Colts fans, because now you're not talking about Jonathan Taylor contract drama. Who's good? What's your rookie quarterback going to do in his first training camp? It's nothing but full steam ahead, and the 2024 season is right around the corner.
A lot of hype around this team locally, and I think if things go like we all think they will, the national media won't be far behind. Could be a really big year for the Indianapolis Colts. So that's our show for tonight, guys. Really appreciate everybody tuning in the night before training camp to get all set for the next few weeks as the Colts are finally back. Want to give a shout out to our super chats tonight, our teammate Noah and the CFO Patrick. Thank you guys so much for your super chats, and everyone else that joined us here tonight. I saw NFL Nerd in the chat with his comment. Feel sorry for you, man. Apologize that your dog passed away. But hey, hopefully we were able to brighten up your night here, and I'm glad that you were still able to join us this evening. Want to give a shout out to Stats Matt, our friend Brandon, Jack Rizzo was in the chat, Sean Contright, Joshua was in here as well. Ashley, thank you guys all so much for all of your support. And if you haven't done so, please go follow us on our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts _SI, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel and hit that bell so you know when Drake and I will go live every Monday and Thursday night, or for special occasions like tonight. And if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star review while you're there as well. Drake, let's tell the people what we got on horseshoehuddle.com so that you can get off and enjoy the rest of their Wednesday evening.
Yeah, so just some camp updates here, but also some power rankings for the Colts. Zaire Franklin finally got at least a little bit of respect league-wide, and there's going to be way more to come, people. So please keep tuned in to Indianapolis Colts on SI.
Go give Drake's stuff a read, guys. The hardest working man in Colts media. He deserves all of the pub, all of the praise. Definitely go give his stuff a read. Myself, another Rookie Files on tap as Micah Abraham. His Rookie Files came out this evening on horseshoehuddle.com. Really fun one to do, as Micah Abraham comes up from NFL bloodlines. His father played in the NFL. His cousin played in the NFL, Tim Jennings, a former Indianapolis Colt. Both of those guys Pro Bowls. Micah Abraham is hoping to follow in their footsteps. And I'll also have a piece tomorrow talking about who else? Anthony Richardson, and really how this Colts team, there's something building in here, guys, because a lot of these guys talked about Anthony Richardson today in ways that aren't just your normal cliche answers about a starting quarterback. These guys think that number 5 is pretty special, and you can tell by what they're saying. I'm going to have a piece out on that tomorrow morning on horseshoehuddle.com. Make sure to check that out as well as everything else on our site. Go follow Drake at DWelster You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we'll be back Monday night to get you all caught up on all of the news from training camp. Practice is Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. I think the Colts are back off on Monday. So we'll have 3 practices worth of information to give you, tell you who's standing out, who isn't, and what all the happenings are from Grand Park in Westfield, Indiana. So make sure you tune in Monday night. We'll be right here, Colts fans, and football is finally back. Get ready for some fun.